Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high.
Thank you for joining us for Lift, the Sunday night ministry of the Old Hickory Church of Christ. We're glad that you're with us. And tonight we're going to lift up Christ and we're going to lift up one another. So thank you for being here. This is the year of kindness for the Old Hickory Church of Christ. Our memory verse is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 30 through 32. In the last verse, it says, "Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another." But in the previous verse, it tells us that we need to eliminate unkind behaviors. We've talked about 4 of those. Put away bitterness, put away wrath, put away anger, put away clamor. And now you need to put away slander. Slander is personal. Slander is usually intentional. And we don't need to use our words to hurt people, to insult them, or to damage their reputations. Instead, we want to build people up. When I think about this problem of slander, my mind goes to the book of Genesis in the 39th chapter. And it tells the story of Joseph being sold into captivity by his brothers who were jealous. This caravan of Ishmaelites go down to Egypt. They find a willing buyer in a man by the name of Potiphar. He's an officer of Pharaoh. And it doesn't take long to find out that he has some uncanny abilities, because everything he does prospers. He gives him a little responsibility and he's successful. So he gives him a little more and he does well. No matter what he puts on him, he's able to exercise the leadership and to engage in the delegation and the oversight that makes everything work well. And it seems as if Potiphar realized that there's more going on that meets the eye. Indeed, the success of Joseph was that he had the favor of God resting upon him, and Potiphar benefited from that. Until he just left, there was nothing that wasn't under Joseph's control. The only thing that Potiphar had to do on a given day was just to decide what to eat. And other than that, Joseph took care of it all. It was a beautiful arrangement until a problem arose. Potiphar's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. There are looks and there are looks. And this was a look of lust. The Bible tells us that Joseph was handsome. He was fit and he was good looking. And she decided that she must have him. She was going to seduce him. And so she extended that invitation for him to sleep with her. And he said, "Oh no." Now she must have been surprised. That would be quite an invitation for a slave and a foreigner. And yet he said, "I cannot do this. My master's been too good to me. He's entrusted everything to my care except for you, because you're his wife, and I cannot betray his trust. And I cannot commit this great sin against God." And he wants to please God. He loves God. He probably also understood that his success wasn't due to his own ingenuity, but because he was doing what the Lord wanted. And should he sin, he will alienate himself from God, and he would not have the same kind of success in the future. So he says no, but she doesn't hear no. She will not take no for an answer. She keeps flirting. She keeps enticing. And finally, she gets tired of being coy. And one day he comes in and the household servants are outside instead of inside, and she grabs hold of Joseph's clothes. When she gets a hold of him, she just is insistent. Come lie with me. So there's no mistaking her intention now. Joseph immediately flees. He doesn't sit and think about this. What should I do under this circumstance? It's instinctive for him. I don't need to be here. This is wrong. And he flees. Now, if he tries to wrestle with her, she could get hurt and something violent could take place. So he just slips out of his garment and then slips out of the house on his way. In fact, the New Testament tells us that we are to flee youthful lusts along with those who call on God out of a pure heart. Joseph had a pure heart, and so he was ready to flee. That's a good example. Get yourself out of those compromising situations. But when he escapes, this is when we find Potiphar's wife wanting to slander him. Why? Maybe because she's hurt. Maybe it's retaliation because of his rejection. That may be part of it. But I think the greater part was not retaliation, but protection, because if he tells the true story, she's in trouble. And so she cries out to get the attention of the servants outside. They come in, and she uses the coat here as evidence. This is exhibit 1 against Joseph. She apparently tells the story as if just boldly Joseph comes in and begins to disrobe and make inappropriate advances and force himself upon her when nothing could be further from the truth. She makes herself out to be the innocent party. And when she screams, he, embarrassed, runs away, and he forgets that he had disrobed, and he leaves his coat behind. Well, she tells them the story, and they may have been inclined to believe it, because if this foreigner was gone, that would open up opportunities for them. Then her husband comes home, and she presents the evidence, and she tells the story again, and Potiphar is angry, and Joseph is cast into prison. And here's the good news. The Bible says God was with Joseph. He had been slandered. There's no question that when you're slandered, it hurts. And you may lose some privilege, you may lose some opportunity, you may lose some job. But always believe this, that if you do what is right, God is with you. And Joseph is going to prosper once again. Now, he's going from captivity into jail, and that's not the direction that he wants to be moving. And yet he has confidence that wherever he is, that God is working providentially in his life. And God was working. We need to trust God. In fact, the Bible tells us that when Jesus was reviled, he did not revile. When he was threatened, he did not retaliate, but he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. So you present your case, tell the truth, but you need to put your trust in God. You don't have to become hysterical. And you don't have to even become resentful. I think rather than trying to overcome evil with evil, what we need to do is probably feel sorry for and pray for those who have behaved unethically. It doesn't mean that you use the recourse that is available to you, but sometimes there's nothing that you can do. And if that's the case, you keep trusting in God. And what we see is the cream always rises to the top. Here's a man of faith and of virtue, of initiative, integrity. And the keeper of the prison finds out the same thing that Potiphar knew and entrusts more and more responsibility to him. And God uses him. And he glorifies God. I think Joseph epitomizes that old proverb, bloom where you are planted. Use whatever opportunity, wherever you are, to trust in God and to glorify God. Slander is a terrible thing. It doesn't feel good. There are always problems and hurtful implications. But we don't respond with evil for evil. Instead, we overcome evil with good. And most of all, we don't want to engage in slander. We need to catch ourselves. If we're misrepresenting the facts, if we're exaggerating, if we're doing anything to harm somebody's reputation and make others think less of them, we need to stop. We need to stop. And instead, we need to have the kind of heart, the tender heart, that helps us use our words for the good of our fellow man and for the glory of God. Slander, that's not kind. Slander needs to be eliminated. I hope you enjoy your discussion tonight as we talk more about what this is and what the downside of slander is, as we look at the causes of it, as we look at the solutions to it, as we think about what our response should be. We want to follow Jesus' example. Yes, he was slandered. Yes, he suffered. But Jesus did not sin. Put away slander. God bless. Enjoy your discussion.
You came from heaven to earth to show the way. From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high.